So for this demonstration, we're going to be using chalk pastels and liquid starch. So here's my picture. I did an elephant and I just went ahead and traced it with Sharpie. This is the picture I'm working off of. So there's a lot of colors, there's highlights, shadows, and a lot of different tones in the gray elephant. You don't want to just paint it just gray. So I'm going to be using all these different colors and different shades and not just make it one solid color so it'll look more realistic. So let's start with this highlight that's over here on his back. There's a lot of whites in there and even a little bit of purples. So I'm going to start with my white so I can make sure I know this is a highlight. And I'm just going to start shading where I know the lighter spot of his back is. I know you can't see the white right now. Now I'll kind of blend some gray with it. I'm using my lighter gray. It's going to overlap a little bit, and that's a good thing. I'm going to shade in some of my gray with my white. And I know this will be a lighter section. That white will really help it make it lighter. But now I need it start getting darker as it goes towards the edge and as it goes underneath as well. It's going to blend to get a little bit darker. This will help it look more three-dimensional as well, more rounded out. Now I like using a little bit of purple because there were some purple tints and we don't want this to look picture perfect, right? We want this to look a little more realistic. So I'm adding in a little bit of this lavender with the gray. Now I'm going to dip my finger in the liquid starch because this chalk, if I just brushed my hand over it, it would just go everywhere and blend everywhere. We need some kind of fixative, and I like using liquid starch that I've just put in this tray right here to blend it all together nicely, and then it'll have it stay. So I'm just going to dip my finger in the starch directly and start massaging it into the chalk. Now, I just said the word massage like that because I got this technique from an art teacher named Cassie Stevens, and she says it like that on her video too. Just massage the chalk. It's going to be blending the colors nicely together while also keeping the chalk there. As it dries, the chalk will stay there. This new mixture you've made will stay as a fixative. The direction that you're using your finger also matters as well. I'm doing mine the same kind of curve that the elephant's curving to help it look more three-dimensional. All right, so now for this next part, I'm going to look back and try to pick my colors for this one. It starts getting to be more darker and shadowier underneath the elephant. It also, I noticed, has some more warm tones in the bottom part of the elephant. So I'm using some warm tones to tone this gray into a warmer gray. So I've added in some peach. I'm going to use this kind of pinkish brown in some section as well. Again, I'm overlapping my colors so they blend really nicely. Next, I'm going to take my darker grays so I know where all my shadows are. So the sun is hitting the top of the elephant. Underneath it gets really dark, especially in these back legs. So I'm going to use this really dark gray. Make sure I'm getting nice shadows. I'm making sure to refer back to my picture often so I know I'm putting the shadows in the right sections and the highlights in the right sections. Now I'll take my gray, my lighter gray, and blend it all back together. Once I get everything covered how I want it to, I can take my starch again and blend it all together. It kind of creates your own little paint texture, your paint mixture as the chalk blends in and mixes in with the starch. It can look a little watercolor-esque. So now for the sky, I'm fast forwarding a little bit and we're going to work on the sky a little bit. I had some clouds in there. On top of the clouds, the sky got a lot more greenish blue. And then as the sky reached down towards the land, it got to be a little bit more purpley blue into gray even. So I'm gonna make sure I have some white and gray along with a purple and a greenish blue, a light blue, and I'm even gonna use a little bit of a green. Sorry, I had a hard time finding the green. Okay, so let's move these colors off for a second. And let's start, I'm going to use my white again and map out where some of those clouds were. Now I'm not drawing cartoony clouds, I'm just mapping out where some lighter spaces of the sky would be. It's sometimes hard to do the white because you can't really see where you're doing it, so you have to just trust your instincts. All right, so now underneath those kind of cloud shapes, I'll be using my light blue because like I said, as it gets towards the land, it starts turning more blue into like a purpley gray. You can see how my paper is shiny, it's still wet. Now I'm going to blend in with my purple, putting them over one another. Notice I'm not putting the colors side by side. I'm overlapping them so I know that they'll be blending nicely. And then this purple will blend down to a gray. This is helping create atmospheric perspective. The further distance, the duller the colors. So that's why you see a lot of times skies will get more gray and light as it hits the horizon. Now above my clouds, I'm going to use this blue-green color. It gets darker as it gets higher up, and even my green right on top. Now this is way warmer of a green than I was expecting. So after I finish this little section, I might go back over it with my light blue and blend another little layer of blue down so I know it's not going to be too green. Now I'll get my starch and start massaging in all the colors. Now, again, like I said, the direction that you're using your finger is going to make a difference. If you want your sky to be really smooth like a sunset, just go left and right. I want mine to kind of have some movement to it. So I'm going to be doing little circles with my finger as I'm blending in this chalk to make some movement and some unique things happening with the sky. I'm making sure I get everywhere. I want to put starch everywhere that I have chalk because that chalk, like I said, it could just blend right off. You'll just rub right off and the chalk will get everywhere else where you don't want it to get and it gets really messy. So you want to make sure you're putting starch everywhere that your chalk is. All right, so now we're moving on to the land. Got my elephant, I have my sky. Now for this land, we use a lot of warm tones, some yellows and oranges and browns and things like that. So I need to go make sure I have all the warm tones that I want for this kind of sandy ground. For this, I'll have a yellow and an orange, kind of that pinky brown again. And maybe two different shades of orange, actually. So now instead of white being my highlight, I'm actually going to use this yellow as my highlight instead because the ground doesn't have a lot of white. So we'll start with my yellow and I'm going to lay down where I want the lighter areas of my ground. Then I'll work my way out, take the lighter orange and blend, overlapping the orange with the yellow. Now for the ground, I do want it to be really flat. So I'm going to just do side to side lines. Well, I just went up and down for that one little section, but I am doing side to side lines. Now I have my darker orange, and last, that kind of pinkish brown that I used in the elephant. I really like this color. All right, now time for my starch. And like I said, the direction of your finger matters. So since I want this to be more of a flat desert feel of a ground, I'm only going to go left and right as I'm blending in, massaging that starch into the paper. Now, if you blend with your finger and you don't have starch on it, the chalk will blend nicely, but like I said, it's just going to be a mess. It won't stay put. The starch helps it keep in place and have a really nice effect. All right, and lastly, all that's left is the kind of bushes that are in the background. So I'm going to get my green, fill those babies in, and we will have an art piece. I'm making sure to put starch on it because we need to have starch everywhere we have chalk. And there you have it. Here's my little elephant.